Sorry for the delay. I was trying to see that I join as fast as possible. Hello, everyone, and good evening, good morning to everyone. I know some of us have just woken up and others are starting. So I would like to present myself. My name is Lubega Henry. I'm a member of the Ecological Party of Uganda, and I'm also a member of the co-convener. I'm a co-convener of the Global Biodiversity Ocean Sub-Team. I'm very honored to be the moderator of this session for the biodiversity group, and I'm very glad that all of us will be happy to see that we get this planet forward, and biodiversity is quite very important to all of us. I'm very honored, and this session is very important to me and to all the people with different backgrounds. So I wouldn't like to waste a lot of time because I know most of the time has already gone. I would like to introduce one of our panel first speaker, that is Halisen Tuhana. Yeah, probably I pronounced the name very well. I would like to just give a very brief introduction. She's an indigenous member from the Cook Island, and she has been working with different leaders within New Zealand. That is Mario Environmental Organized Leadership, and she's very she has been working with different groups within the indigenous communities on biodiversity and how to conserve and respect the biodiversity the community has or God has offered us. So I would like for her to go briefly and then give us more insights on the indigenous and then also the knowledge that she could give us regarding biodiversity and the people that are within the indigenous community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I would first like to acknowledge all our Green Party members, supporters, and volunteers around the world. My name is Elise Tehuna. As Henry said, I am an Indigenous environmentalist. I am Māori and Cook Island from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have worked for many years with my Indigenous communities on environmental protection and caring for the land, rivers, and oceans. Today, I'll speak about why Indigenous peoples have an important role in protecting biodiversity and nature. If the first slide could be put up, please. Apologies, everyone, we've changed our order. So Indigenous peoples and biodiversity. I will talk about three key ideas here: Indigenous knowledge, land and connection to nature, and rights and decision making. Indigenous peoples have deep knowledge about nature. This knowledge comes from our families. It's passed down from generations from our parents, our grandparents, and our elders. It teaches us how to understand the land we live on, the weather that we experience, and the plants and animals that we have on our land. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, Māori use the idea of kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga means caring for and protecting the environment. It also means taking only what is needed, thinking about the future, and protecting nature for children and our future generations. Because of this, Indigenous ways of living are often more sustainable, and we are more careful with how we use our natural resources as Indigenous people. Land and connection to nature. Indigenous peoples live on land that has very high biodiversity value. This means many different plants and animals live there. Some are rare and need our protection. Research shows that Indigenous managed lands are often well protected, sometimes even better than our national parks in our own countries. This is because Indigenous peoples have a strong connection to their land. They see land as family, not just property. But today, these lands are under threat. There are many problems, such as deforestation, cutting down forests, mining, pollution, and of course, as we know, climate change. These problems harm nature. Animals and plants can disappear and become extinct. But there is another important impact that we need to learn about. When land is damaged, Indigenous cultures are also harmed. And when cultures are harmed, we lose traditional knowledge about how to care for nature. Rights and decision making. In the past, some conservation projects removed Indigenous peoples from their land. This caused harm and injustice. It also did not always protect nature well. Today, many people understand how this was wrong. Indigenous people should not be excluded. They should be included in decisions, respected as knowledge holders, and leaders in protecting the environment. When Indigenous peoples and other non-Indigenous groups work together, results are often better. This cooperation helps protect biodiversity in a stronger and more respectful way. If we can go to the next slide, please. Working together to protect nature. This whakatauki is in my native language, te reo Māori, ko te taiao ko au ko te taiao. In English, this means I am the environment and the environment is me. There are three key lessons. First, people and nature are connected. We cannot separate them. Second, there are different ways of knowing the world. Indigenous knowledge is very important and must be respected. Thirdly, Indigenous communities must be supported and protected. Their rights do matter. If Indigenous peoples are strong, then nature is also stronger. So protecting biodiversity also means supporting the well-being and livelihoods of Indigenous peoples. Next slide, please. Rights of nature. Now, I wanted to give a few examples from around the world around the rights of nature. So firstly, we'll go to Aotearoa, New Zealand, the Whanganui River and whales in Aotearoa, New Zealand. In Aotearoa, the Whanganui River has legal personhood. Some of you might ask, what is legal personhood? This means the river is treated in law like a living being with its own rights. This helps Māori and their values to guide how the river is cared for as a whole ecosystem. Also, currently we have a proposed law for whales. One of our Aotearoa Green Party members of Parliament, Te Anau Tuiono, has introduced a bill called the Tohora Oranga Bill. This bill will give whales legal rights. It aims to protect whales from fishing harm, pollution, climate change. It also protects their natural behavior and their movements in the ocean. It is based on Indigenous knowledge and respects whales as ancestors for many Pacific peoples. I'm wearing my whale shirt too to this presentation. Colombia, rivers with rights. In Colombia, some rivers are also being recognized as having rights. This means rivers are protected not only for nature, but also for people who depend on them. A proposed law would look like restoring water sources, reducing pollution, limiting harmful projects like dams, creating a national system to protect rivers. This supports both nature and local communities. Now we move to Brazil and to the Amazon and corporate pressure. In Brazil, Indigenous and environmental groups are protesting. They're concerned about companies like Cargill. They believe weaker environmental protections in the Amazon are leading to more deforestation, damage to rivers and forests, and harm to Indigenous lands. They also say Indigenous peoples are not always properly consulted. This shows the importance of respecting Indigenous rights in environmental decisions. Ecocide law. Ecocide means serious damage to nature, like destroying forests, killing ecosystems, and harming endangered species. The idea is to make this a crime in international law. This would mean governments and companies must take responsibility for major environmental damage. For example, in Scotland, a law has moved forward that could make ecocide a criminal offence with strong penalties like fines or time in prison. Convention on Biological Diversity. The Convention on Biological Diversity recognizes Indigenous traditional knowledge, innovations, and practices under Article 8G. This includes knowledge about land, water, farming, and animals and plants. This knowledge must be respected, protected, and used only with permission. Some key actions under Article 8J include things like including Indigenous peoples in decisions, protecting traditional knowledge, ensuring free, prior, and informed consent, sharing benefits fairly, stopping misuse of knowledge, creating laws and ethical rules, and supporting international cooperation. This helps protect biodiversity and Indigenous rights together. To finish, Indigenous peoples play a very important role in protecting biodiversity. Their knowledge, their connection to their land, and their rights are essential. If we want to protect the planet, we must protect Indigenous communities and work with them. When Indigenous peoples are respected and included, nature is also protected. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Tehuna, for that presentation. It's very incredible, and thank you very much for keeping time. And I would like to go straight to Pauline, for one of my members that I work with on oceans, and I'm very glad to see her here actually joining us. Pauline has been working. She has been an activist for quite a long time, and she's a member of the French Greens since 2017. She has been working in so many different fields on culture diplomacy in South Asia and different other parts of the region for almost 3 years. So she's a very good expertise in fishing and knowledge on marine, and I'm glad to give her the panel to speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Henry. And hello, everybody. Bonjour. It's really great to see you all. It's great to hear from all of you. And happy 25th anniversary, of course, to everybody. And thanks to all those who worked since 2001 to enable us to be here today. Because you really paved the way, and we are proud continuers of your work. Yeah, thanks, Henry, because as you said, we actually are the co-conveners, so to say, both of us of this group. But I really wanted to thank the very active members and who also helped for this presentation. I absolutely didn't do it alone. So thanks, Dominic, thanks, Maureen, thanks, Michelle, thanks, Alain, and thanks, Henry, of course. And I hope I didn't forget anybody. So the working group on oceans was founded about a year ago. We meet every month. It's a subgroup of the Biodiversity Working Group, and it was very important to set it up because, as you know, our oceans cover 2/3 of our planet, and yet, even us as Green, we talk very little about oceans, which is bad because, of course, their health are essential in the fight against climate change. And for the preservation of biodiversity, of course. Humanity's responsibility in preserving and nurturing our oceans is vital, and we can't be satisfied, of course, with words that aren't followed by deeds. Today's oceans are threatened by a range of human-driven pressures, from industrial fishing, coastal infrastructure development, oil and gas extraction, seabed mining, as well as climate change, which lead to ocean waters acidification and warming. Overconsumption of marine food and related product resources is also very bad and putting marine life under strain that is unprecedented in modern history. So that's why us Global Greens are fighting at local, national, and international level for healthy oceans. So just a quick reminder for what we push for generally. So marine protection and to have 30% of oceans protected by 2030 in accordance with the 30 by 30 targets adopted under the CBD Kunming-Montreal Global Diversity Framework, with 10% of our oceans under strict protection, including at least 10% of coastline. We also fight for sustainable fishing, of course, with a ban on bottom trawling. And of course, with supporting small-scale sustainable fisheries. We fight for offshore renewable energy, keeping in mind that these energies shouldn't be at the cost of marine biodiversity. We heard an example of how some projects can be harmful for biodiversity from our friends in Japan just a few minutes earlier. We fight for nature-based solution to restore blue carbon ecosystems. We fight to combat pollution and especially plastic pollution. And we call for a cut in plastic pollution by 70% by 2030 as well. And of course, Alice talked about it just now. We fight to recognize indigenous people's right to traditional ocean territories and fisheries. As you may have heard and seen, because we sent several press releases in June last month, we were very active in the Ocean Summit that happened in June 2025 in Nice, in southern France. And we are still now tracking the coming into force of the BBNG. So it's the agreement on biodiversity beyond a national jurisdiction. Sorry, it's a bit difficult to say. So we press for the broader ratification of this agreement, which is, directed at the conservation and proper management of the water column. So it's the high seas that is beyond the national jurisdictions of coastal states. It's a very innovative and historic agreement because it's the first time that there are such laws to actually govern the high seas. So it's very important that we keep that we make sure that this treaty is actually ratified by as many people, by as many parties as possible, and implemented. There's also another treaty and a regulatory framework that we are following very thoroughly. It's the deep sea. It's on deep sea mining. That is related to the exploitation of mining activities on the deep seabed. And as you may know, there is a regulatory framework. So as I said, that is under negotiation right now at the UN International Seabed Authority, the ISA. And so we are following these works very closely as well, in order to make sure that no exploitation activities are taking place that would harm again our oceans. Especially as we see from Norway, from Trump, an increasing interest in mining, which would be very, very bad and scary in case this would happen without some proper frameworks. So what we support is a comprehensive implementation of a moratorium of any exploitation until environmental impacts are fully understood, which is not the case right now. And so we actually push for proper management. And otherwise, we will, of course, always ask for a moratorium on seabed mining. So join this working group, because there will be lots of other things we will work on. So we will keep on working on the BBNG agreement I talked about. And there will be a COP actually taking place to see that this treaty is coming into force. It has to happen within this year, so it will probably be very soon. So we will follow up on that. We will also follow up on the ISA mining code I talked about, to stop seabed exploitation. We will keep on work on following up the UN's work on the adoption of the treaty to address plastic pollution, which of course affects our oceans a lot. We will also, regarding fisheries, keep on tracking the activities of the Food and Agriculture Organization, and keep on looking at what the various regional fisheries management organizations do to have more responsible and sustainable fishery efforts and practices. And of course, we will keep on looking at the work of the various oceans conferences, including the 11th Our Ocean Conference that will take place in Nairobi, Kenya next June, under the theme Our Ocean, Our Heritage, Our Future. So please don't hesitate in joining us because there are very much exciting, there's a lot of exciting work to come. And we absolutely need help, expertise, but also simply activists who are passionate about the oceans and who want to help us defend them. Thank you so much. And see you very soon.
Thank you very much, Pauline. It's great, and also thank you for keeping time. And please join us to protect the oceans and the biodiversity within the oceans. I would like to introduce one of the pillars of the biodiversity working team, and that is Michelle. She's a founder and a co-convener of the biodiversity working group under the Global Greens, and she has been working in different organizations and different bodies within the UN, and she has worked for almost 35 years all over the continent regarding different issues, and more especially on the issue of biodiversity. So I would like to give her the floor to give us more insights on the co-treaties and also the CBD. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry, Pauline, Elise. If we could go to the PowerPoint presentation would be wonderful. And also just acknowledging the work of my co-convener for the past 2 years, Dorothy Nalabegu, also from Uganda, and our new co-convener, Lena Maria Quendol Lopez from Colombia, with the help of Maria Rodriguez from Canada. So could we possibly go to the PowerPoint, please, folks? Thank you. This is quickly about our program and work and the political work we're doing. So the Global Greens Biodiversity work started not quite 2 years ago, and we've done an awful lot. We started with a resolution at the Korean Congress recognizing that the biodiversity loss is a huge global crisis. We meet monthly on the first Monday of the month at 11 a.m. UTC on Zoom, and all members of member parties are welcome to join. There's been a shift in the key drivers of biodiversity loss. Nowadays, industrial agriculture, which causes land clearance, of course, across all of the 13, most of the 13 key ecosystem definitions, ecosystems, and overfishing. And one of the big drivers of biodiversity losses is intensive animal agriculture, growing food for intensive farming, such as factory farming, and a lot of land clearance to actually graze animals. It used to be logging. It has changed now. For land clearance, logging is about 80% of which is illegal, so very, very hard to monitor. And mining and extractive industries are the three key drivers of biodiversity loss globally. And we hear this from all the people on the committee. On the working group, we've also done our own research with case studies around the world that can be found on the Global Greens website, and each of them have identified those three drivers. Next slide, thank you. And we call the interface between the climate change work, which is the other Global Greens working group, and the biodiversity work as a polycrisis. They're a dual crisis because they're inextricably linked. We work with ecology defenders and ocean defenders, protecting all the 13 ecosystems around the world and the people defending them. Annually, there's at least 120 people killed around the world as ecology defenders. In the political fora, our main fora is the Convention on Biological Diversity that we've worked on, and we worked very closely with the Americas Federation and the Colombian Greens at COP16 in Colombia around 18 months ago now. And from that, a group working to protect the Amazon with the Greens came up, which is still going, which is great. We're trying to use the influence we had from a very positive outcome from that COP and the one before in Montreal in Canada to take that through to Armenia in October this year. We'll talk a little bit about that later because it is a key moment for that work. We've, just as Pauline outlined, achieved the High Seas Treaty, which was decades in the making. It means we can have marine reserves on the high seas and we can regulate activity outside nations' economic zones. And of course, fish and other species being migratory it impacts the livelihoods of all the nations that have massive coastlines. And then we have the desertification conference. It's the third of what's called the Rio Conventions. They came out of the first Earth Summit, which was in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 1992. And I and Oscar Rivas from Paraguay and a few others were there, actually. And so it's great to see that finally, after so many years, we're actually getting results in the CBD. One we don't work on so closely, but we need to pay more attention to because many countries are increasing desertification, often from overgrazing and climate change issues, is the COP17 in Mongolia in August. And we'd be very interested if anyone is interested in attending that. And we do have a green environment minister, as we did in Colombia, and it makes a huge difference. I won't touch more on oceans. Carbon offsets is another issue we've been looking at with the greenwashing of real targets, but there are some movements to drop debt in exchange for biodiversity protection, and also having carbon offsets, for example, to not cut down forests or not clear land instead of doing so, and that makes it a long-term biodiversity carbon offset, not a short-term. Tree planting is not the same as protecting an entire ecosystem that might have taken thousands of years to form. One of the key demands we took to the last COP in Colombia, and it had a follow-up COP in Rome, and thank you, the Italian Greens, for helping us with that. Basically is to reverse what's called harmful agricultural subsidies. As in the fossil fuel industry, there is huge subsidies worth trillions of US dollars annually, trillions, if you include the fisheries industry, that basically reverse biodiversity. So if one thing could be done, which was to convert those harmful agricultural subsidies for the forest logging, for agriculture, for fisheries into biodiversity protection, the world will be on a different trajectory, basically. So that is something we have been advocating and lobbying for very hard. And we actually did get that in the text in Rome. It took some time, but that would be one of the key demands that we carry forward as well. And as a lifelong vegetarian, I probably shouldn't say this, but do think about your meat consumption. If we can have the next slide, please. Okay, so this year is critical to act because we're doing a stock take on the Convention on Biological Diversity. We had these great last 4 years of political movement, and now it's time to do a stock take. So this is basically what is behind the Convention on Biological Diversity. We have 195 countries ratified. The US has never ratified, and to be clear, in this convention, we don't care. We're doing quite well without them. And they would actually probably hold us back. Next slide, please. I'm saying that more than anything else, aren't I? Next slide, please. Okay, previous slide, please. 2 slides back, please. Sorry. The big breakthroughs we had, 2 slides back, thank you, was to ensure that there's a minimum of a third of the world's land mass. This is per country of the 195 countries, and 30% of their coastline and estuaries are protected areas by 2030. And we've seen some good movements on this. We've just had the largest marine reserve of 100,000 square miles in what's called French Polynesia around Tahiti. Before that, Hawaii has the largest reserves. Chile has just also had some huge reserves. So we're getting some progress, but at the Armenia meeting in October, all this is being evaluated to see how we're going. So we've got what we're calling the Road to Armenia, which gives us about 7 months to really push national parties to help push their governments to do more. The other key thing is to decrease hazardous chemical pollution by at least 50%. And this includes pesticides, which are a huge issue that are contributing to species extinction. 70% of insects have become extinct. And that, of course, affects the entire food chain and food web. There's huge runoff issues from pesticides into rivers for eutrophication where the oxygen levels are depleted. And also it's destroying many coral reefs along the coast where there's a runoff which, combined with climate change is causing a lot of coral bleaching and coral die-off. Now, next slide, please. Thank you for the background help with everyone too. Okay, so something that is also very key in many, many countries is invasive species mitigation, trying to restrict the impact or wipe out the impact of invasive species. There's a few examples of islands around the world where they've been able to do this with rats or foxes, but it still is a huge issue. Like one fox can wipe out a whole colony of birds, for example. The other thing in every UN convention now, particularly since the US decreased its funding, it never really funded this body, but China and the EU and other countries, Switzerland, have stepped up, is that what funding measures are in place nationally to safeguard the above. We need, of course, not just the policies, but we need the implementation and the monitoring of the policies. So what we're really doing is asking parties to help us in October to make sure your national party has these measures in place. And they're called National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plans. It's a bit of a mouthful, but every party around the world that's a member of Global Greens, or nearly every party, is a signature to the CBD. And if we can all work together towards that, it's really going to make a big difference for the planet. Next slide, please. It's one of those moments that you can't let slip. Okay, this is just very quickly the biodiversity hotspots around the planet. And we, of course, advocate protection of all biodiversity ecosystems. But the hotspots are important in that once humanity becomes, previous slide, please, the map. Once humanity reaches a better moment, these are like our genetic banks and our seed banks that we can then hopefully regenerate to some of the planet that's been destroyed. It's interesting looking where they are. Now, that does not mean if there's a key forest in India or Venezuela that we want to protect, that we don't protect it. We do. But these are essential to protect for not only the seed banks, but the biodiversity banks on the planet. And we need more of these hotspots. This is just the first initial round, but they need to keep expanding. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've talked about this so much. We really need to work with the European Greens. We don't have a Green Party in Armenia as we have in the previous places. We do work very strongly with the Canadian Greens because the Secretariat is in Montreal for the Convention on Biological Diversity, and we do regularly meet with them as well to see how we can work together. As Global Greens, we actually advocate more than the 30%. It's what the environment ministers thought was the minimum needed for protection for the planet to survive. We advocate 50%, and in key areas such as the Amazon, we advocate 80%, which is in line with what most of the indigenous peoples of the Amazon are asking for, if not full protection. The Amazon is currently being destroyed at around 17% to 18% is destroyed. Once it hits 25% destruction, it's one of the key global tipping points that would mean global environmental collapse. The next thing to highlight would be the other key indicators, the collapsing of the carbon sinks, which is huge. Also affects the work on our climate change. The change of the water currents in the North Atlantic is also one of the other key huge environmental collapses where the cold water comes to the surface. And of course, the Greenland ice shelf melting as well. Okay, these are some of the things we're calling for. The 200 billion globally, it's recognized, which is less than 2% of the world's GDP, needs to go into environmental safeguard strategies. and enhance global biodiversity. We need to legislate for nature ecology and ocean reserves, and they need to be meaningful. There should be no industrial fisheries in ocean reserves, which there are actually in parts of Europe. The United Kingdom is starting to reverse that, but it's not possible to have an ocean reserve with bottom trawling, for example. The next is, as Elise has outlined, that 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity is concentrated on Indigenous territories. That's on the land, 80%. And Article 8J is set up as the permanent body in the CBD for Indigenous peoples and local communities, and that's particularly local communities that have been there for a very, very long time, such as 500 years for the African communities in South America, for example, that they have a permanent body inside the CBD so that their voice can be heard as the stewards of the 80% of the remaining land biodiversity on the planet. Okay, wrapping up. Next slide, please.
Yeah, please. We're
There
running
we
out of
go.
time. I
Thank you,
think
Henry. Over to you.
yeah.
Just you could highlight the Biodiversity Day on May 22nd for us.
Okay. So thank you very much, Michelle. I think we had run out of time. Try to use the time that we have spared from the previous speakers so that we can incorporate all this. But thank you very much for all this. So on our agenda, we had only 3 speakers for the biodiversity working team. If there are any questions, please, you're free to give us an opportunity to answer them, or you can actually write the questions in the chat box so that we could get time and then get back to you on some of the questions that are required.
Just a question to Elise. With Indigenous, probably land law and the seas, our rivers and our mountains and our skies and our stars with Indigenous people. Elise, how can we improve this and how can we go forward? Can we go through the United Nations or put down, what would you say? In our countries, we call it legislation. Can we make a law of the world of Indigenous people? So it's probably a question for you. My heart is Indigenous. I'm from the Ngāpuhi tribe of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I'll bring that over to you. Thank you, Elise. I enjoyed your talk.
Thank you, Helen.
If you can answer now.
Yes. I'm going to answer the question, but then we have to go for a break, Henry, as we are already over time, and our break will be 10 minutes for everyone. But to answer your question, Helen, yes, in my presentation, there are many ways and many tools that we can use as Indigenous people. And making laws through the United Nations is one way, but it's also legislation as well that I talked about in our own communities, in our own countries, that can make more influence if we are in government as well. So in Aotearoa, New Zealand, for people that don't know, the Green Party is not in government at the moment. So yeah, I think I'm just answering this off the top of my head that I think there are more innovative ways that Indigenous people can protect their land, seas, oceans, their rivers, their mountains, that I don't even think that people know of now. It's more about our traditional Indigenous knowledge and how we can use that to help protect our biodiversity. And I'm going to stop there. Yes, but we will need to go to a break now. But I just wanted to say thank you to Henry for being the moderator for our biodiversity session, and thank you to Michelle and Pauline our presenters as well. Looking at messages.